Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and we are continuing our season preview series today, looking at the second best fan base in the entire National Hockey League. Of course, only behind New York Islanders fans, the Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens had a very active summer. They had the first overall pick in this year's draft. They made some pretty interesting trades as well. And we're going to go over my predictions for what could end up happening in 2022-23 for your Montreal Canadiens. So, let's get right into it. So, the Montreal Canadiens had a pretty solid summer, in free agency, in trades, and of course at the draft floor. To start things off at the draft floor, they made a couple trades. They sent out Alexander Romanov. Kirby Dach comes in, a really nice addition there down the middle. I think, the Habs were lacking a little bit behind Suzuki. So now you bring in Kirby Dach. I think that's a great addition there. They still have to sign him at the making of this video, but I assume they will have something figured out in arbitration, which is not necessarily the best first impression with your new club, but that's kind of how things seem to be going. So Kirby Dach comes in. They also made some trades bringing in Evgeny Dadonov from the Vegas Golden Knights. I think that was a nice addition there. Again, a guy that's going to add some scoring depth. That's kind of how things are in Montreal right now. So they're able to add a guy like Dadonov, acquire some draft picks, and kind of call it a day. Michael Matheson comes in on the back end. I think he's a guy I'm not a huge fan of. He did not play well in that first round series against the New York Rangers, and I have to say, almost every time the Rangers scored, Matheson was on the ice. So that is something that Montreal isn't necessarily getting an upgrade from. But again, it's because of the salary cap and things like that. I understand why they made the trade, but Matheson comes in as well. And then, of course, in the draft, the only guy we're probably going to see next season coming in is Juraj Slafkovsky, the first overall pick in the 2022 NHL draft. I cannot believe I just said the 2022 NHL draft, Slafkovsky. If you told me that a year ago, I would have been like, who is that? And I'm already in 2022. But anyway, so the Montreal Canadiens had a pretty active offseason. Now, if you compare to what their stats were last year, I expect them to be better in both of these categories. Goals for, they were 27th in the National Hockey League. That's bottom 5 in the entire league. That's obviously something that they tried to address, bringing in a guy like Slafkovsky, Dadonov, Dach. They think they could add some scoring depth to that team. And then their goals against was number 32, which is the worst in the entire league. Now you have to consider here as well, they did have a lot of goaltending issues last season, and it looks like they might be starting this season off on the bad side of things because Carey Price does not sound like he'll be ready for training camp or the beginning of the season. So you guys can let me know in the comments as things kind of update with Carey Price, but at the making of this video, it doesn't sound like Carey Price will be there in the beginning of the year. So that's the situation there. As well as their defense just was not very good. There was a lot of young guys that kind of got thrown to the wolves. I expect them to be a little bit more mature and a little bit more experienced next year. Like I said, Matheson, Joel Edmondson, David Savard. All three of those guys right there, I would not want to play against them on a blue line. So those are guys that maybe they're not the best skaters or the best defensemen anymore, and they're a little bit on the older side, but again, this is a rebuild in Montreal. That's just fine. You're really trying to protect your puck-moving defensemen, the younger guys, Justin Barron, Jordan Harris, and I wouldn't say Chris Weidman is a youngster anymore, but you get the point. The Montreal Canadiens are focusing on some of their younger defensive prospects. Caden Gooley's in there, Norlander, Fairbrother, Leskinen, all of those guys are in there. Oh, Madison Bowie too. So, the Montreal Canadiens, I expect things to get better next season. Maybe not a dramatic amount better. I don't expect them to make the playoffs. But I do think there will be some improvement there. The problem is, though, their division is extremely difficult. Pretty much all the bottom teams that they've been kind of feeding at the bottom with have started to get better. The Ottawa Senators, Buffalo Sabres, and the Detroit Red Wings. So all three of those teams are going to try and push themselves further up the standings next season. And I just don't think Montreal is better than any of those teams. I do have Montreal finishing at the bottom of the Atlantic next year. I know, I could hear the Habs fans saying boo. I know. But this is a rebuild, and I think that's okay. That's something that I think most Habs fans will accept, as frustrating as it is. But I think this team, give it another 2 or 3 years, say maybe 2025, 2026, maybe even sooner than that. We're talking about the Montreal Canadiens being a legit contender and one of those better teams in the Atlantic Division. Because you have to think, in 3-4 years from now, are we still talking about the Panthers or the Lightning, or even the Leafs for that matter, being the top teams in that division? Montreal could just shoot right up the standings and nobody even bats an eye. So Montreal, I do have missing the playoffs. I think bottom 10 in the NHL standings, which does mean I do have them in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes for the first overall pick next year. We'll see what happens, but I think they'll be tanking for Bedard most of this season. Guys, let me know what you think down below. What do you think of the Montreal Canadiens? And do you guys think they will get the next elite generational talent, Connor Bedard, in the 2023 NHL Draft? Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.